I'm a murderer. And this is my uniform. All the best murderers wear black tie when committing murder. Dial M for murder, sleuth, various episodes of Columbo. Murder mysteries teach us that. Murder mysteries also teach us that all the best murderers always make a fatal mistake. The unforeseen circumstance, the undiscovered detail, the character flaw that unravels the whole perfectly orchestrated plot. Spiff used to say that one should always wear black tie to formal occasions, and I should think committing murder would qualify. No one had any inkling of Spiff's illness until well after the party for Puss and Pepper. Puss and Spiff had been friends since they were 3 years old, and Puss's new husband, Pepper, a character, plaid cummerbund wearing lampshaded parties type, who had been married and widowed twice himself already, was taking his new bride from the snows of the north to the shores of Florida. The farewell party for them was marvelous. Marvelous. It's one of Spiff's words, a debutante's word from the 40s. Spiff was one of those gals who grew up studying Vogue and never gave in to the aging Vassar hairband look. Spiff is a widow herself. Her husband died 15 years ago. Tonight, she is wearing an ultra-suede pantsuit with a Nero tunic and military buttons. She looks like Diana Vreeland's idea of Dr. No. Tink, tink, tink. Spiff is making a toast. Those of you who can still hold your arms above your chest, please take up a glass. It's not often that we find one true love in our life, let alone a second. Puss, Pepper, you are truly blessed. Bon voyage. Hear, hear. Clink, clink, drink. The next day, Puss and Pepper flew down to Florida. 3 weeks later, Puss was dead. She'd gotten a cold, which turned into pneumonia, and her respirator gave out. Pepper called Spiff with the news.
Oh, it's better this way, Spiff. She was in such pain. I'm moving to Arizona.
Spiff took the news of Puss's death well, but didn't want to discuss the details. That's how it is with Spiff. When someone dies, she takes it, marks it, and moves on. Laura has a very dim view of this. Mother never shows much emotion when somebody dies. I think it's horrible. See, Laura thinks that you should work hard to get to the grief, that you then have to work harder to get out of it. Spiff doesn't know what to call me. Daughter's boyfriend, son-in-law, live-in lover. Laura and I are not married. We met 15 years ago in college outside of Washington, D.C., in West Virginia, of all places. We actually lived there together for 7 years, so I joke with Spiff that we're probably a common-law couple anyways. Spiff really loves us, but our unmarried status irritates her. It's not practical, and Spiff is nothing if not a very practical woman, as you shall soon see. The first inkling of her illness hit in February. She was tired a lot. Her appetite was poor. Laura convinced her to go see Dr. Rosenblum, and a few days later he called and said that we should all come in. Spiff, it's your kidneys. You have a 90% failure. You have 6 to 8 weeks at most. When we left the doctor's office, Spiff marched to the elevator and pushed the up button. Laura looked at me and said, Mom, we're going down, not up. Spiff snapped, up is where my lawyers are. She'd made the appointment in advance. In the attorney's office, we sat down with the estate's lawyer, Arthur Adelot, which sounds like a mnemonic, but it's really his name. Arthur is a man whose discretion is so discreet, it's not even noticed. Arthur is holding a printout.
As of this morning, your estate is estimated at approximately $5 million, give or take.
Spiff nods. And what happens to it if I die today?
Your heir is your daughter, yes, and her boyfriend, yes. The feds for your tax bracket take 40%. 40% of $5 million is $2 million, leaving you with $3 million.
Spiff nods again. $3 million, that's not too bad.
Well, it's not so simple as that, you see. You don't have $2 million in cash. You'd have to sell your stocks. Your stocks are very old. Heirs would have to pay capital gains. There's another third. Now you're down to $2 million. Sell the house, more capital gains. Now you're under $1.5 million.
Spiff gives us a dirty look.
All those years you're trying to get me to vote Democratic.
Isn't there a way around this goddamned mess? This is the first evidence that I have seen
of any emotion from Spiff. And it's not about her pending death. It's about her pending death tax. Arthur nods. Oh, well, the only sheltered arrangement that the feds recognize is that between a husband and a wife. A spouse may leave any amount to the remaining spouse without having to pay a penny to the IRS. Now, I can't tell you that it was much later that the plan struck me, because it struck me immediately. The only question was how to bring it up. That night, over dinner, I gin up my courage to speak, when Spiff suddenly leans across the table and says, I think we should get married. Laura looks up. Who? Arthur said that a spouse may leave any amount to the remaining spouse without having to pay a penny in taxes. I think Gerald and I should get married. That way, when I die, you two get everything without having to pay the goddamn government. I've been given a couple of months. That's plenty of time to do all the official things, and then when I'm gone, you two get everything. There is a requisite stunned silence at the table. Laura is physically stunned. I'm requisite. Now, we couldn't get married here. I wouldn't want people to know. I mean, not for my sake, I'll be dead, but for Laura's. Laura stutters. Mother, this is ridiculous. My husband is not marrying my mother. Sweetie, he's not your husband. You know, I think Gerald is marvelous, but he's never going to make much money. Neither are you. You've practically been living off me for years. Now, Spiff likes me a lot, but she's not blind to the fact that I'm a ne'er-do-well who's never going to keep her daughter in the manner to which Spiff thinks she should be accustomed. I'm aching to turn to Laura and say, she's right, you know. I mean, after all, Spiff and I came up with the same plan, but I think it's better that Laura comes to the decision by herself, on her own. It happens later that night, after we drive home in our Toyota, when we pass by all the BMWs and Mercedes being driven by far less deserving, interesting, or ironic people as we. It happens at our apartment. Isn't it funky? Aren't we bohemian? Aren't we just a little too old to be living like this kind of apartment that we've been living in for 10 years? Under the covers, staring at the same stain in the ceiling, not a word is spoken, until Laura turns to me and says, where would you have to go to get married? Florida! Huh. The Riddle Key Senior Luxury Retirement Living Center and Golf Course. Riddle Key is one of those upscale gated waterfront developments that caters to seasoned citizens. Seasoned as if they're going to eat you. For $500,000, Riddle Key will provide you with a luxury 2-bedroom villa and a 5-year lease. You're betting you don't die before year 5 or after year 5. They're betting you die. Yeah, they're just betting you die. Surprisingly, a great number of residents die on the 5th anniversary exactly. The greatest generation is nothing if not prompt. Dr. Rosenblum has given Spiff 1 month too at the outside, so we're able to negotiate a far less onerous lease plan. After arriving in Florida and getting married at the Justice of the Peace, we settle in and wait it out. I keep a diary with notes and observations. Week 1, I didn't realize Drew Carey had lost all that weight. See, I'm not usually up by 11, but 11 is now lunchtime. I talk to Laura every day. Dinners are pretty basic, lean cuisines mostly. Oh, note to self, Brillo pads cost more than I would have thought. Week 2, General Hospital's a good show. No sign of physical deterioration in Spiff. I talk to Laura every other day. She's moved out of our apartment into Spiff's house, which surprises me, but it is practical. Went out to dinner once this week. Dinners are at 5, and then everyone's in bed by sundown. It's like living in the Antarctic. Week 3, naps are good. Spiff is holding up well, so we go out to dinner 3 times, out to lunch twice, talk to Laura on Sunday. She bought a new car. A Jaguar with voice-activated telephone and satellite navigational system. Laura's getting accustomed to her new status. Week 4. A knock at the door. This is the
first time this has happened, and Spiff and I look at each other as if G-men have come to arrest us. I open the door, and there standing on the threshold is a strange mirror image of us. A woman like Spiff, but older, and a man like me, but weirder. She's a blue rinse number in a silk lavender pantsuit, lots of jewelry. He's in his 50s with blonde hair, Rumpelstiltskin gold. Hi, I'm Jerry Waldenow.
And I'm Cheryl. We live across the street in the condo there, and we've seen you come in and out. We were just heading out to dinner. Would you like to join us?
I'm about to politely decline when I hear Spiff say, that would be marvelous. Dinner is at the Blue Hair Cafe. Real name and the first evidence of irony that I've seen in Florida. Shirley is 87 years old, formerly of Riverdale in the Bronx. Husband Irving was very successful in the flooring business. He died 3 years ago, shortly after they came down to Riddle Key. Cheryl sniffs and takes Jerry's hand.
I met Jerry on a cruise. It's been bliss ever since.
Now, Jerry is more than 30 years younger than Shirley. In his double-breasted blue blazer and orange ascot, he looks more like a kid's version of a sophisticate circa 1973. Now, I don't think Jerry is with Shirley, or indeed any woman for the physical part, but I get the idea from Shirley and her comments that
he performs well.
She's very open about such things. Spiff is open about her condition and how much time she's got. Shirley and Jerry are very sympathetic. And when the evening is over and we're all back at Riddle Key, Shirley calls out from her condo so all the burglars in the neighborhood can hear,
"Come over anytime, the garage door's always open!"
I turn to Spiff. Can you believe it? He's a gigolo. Spiff surprises me. So what if he's a gigolo? He doesn't have to be with an 87-year-old woman. He could be with a 77-year-old woman if he wants. It's money well spent. Oh, so you granted he's in it only for the money? Unlike? I start to stammer, unable to defend myself, when Spiff rescues me. She pats me on the cheek. Don't get so worked up. Our children get so righteous when it comes to sex and money. Week 6. Spiff is gaining weight. She lost 15 pounds up north, but now she's losing weight. Her Dr. No outfits don't fit anymore. I suggest that she see a doctor, and she says, I thought my dying was the whole idea. Well, she has a point. I did convince her to see the on-site physician, Dr. Nagan Gupta. We have her medical records sent from home. Says Dr. Nagan Gupta, I would like to run a few tests of my own. When we leave his clinic, Shirley and Jerry pull up in a 1965 red convertible Mustang. Would we like to join them for 9 holes? Says Jerry, you have to work on your tan chair. And that's when it struck me. We have the same name. Gerald, Jerry. He's my gay suntan gigolo doppelganger. I'm about to politely decline when I hear, that would be marvelous. 9 holes. Which for someone like me is like the opening to Saving Private Ryan. Cheryl and Spiff tease me about my hacking, my sweating, my gasping. I call for a medic. But it's at that exact moment that we hear a voice shout out, Spiff! We turn from the hole to see a small, wizened man has made his way to the putting green. Pepper, what the hell are you doing here? Pepper toddles up in his golf togs.
I moved back. I did not like all those young people in Arizona.
Pepper stares up at me, unable to place me. I'm out of context. Spiff stumbles through the introductions. Pepper, this is Shirley and Jerry, and this is Gerald. You remember Gerald, don't you? He was at the party for you and Puss. Now Pepper has tears in his eyes.
Oh, Spiff, it was good that Puss went the way she did. She was in such pain. Same with my first 2 wives. They were in such pain.
There's a moment of silence. And
And then Pepper claps his hands. Hey, Spiff, what say you and I cut the rope this Saturday night? There's a big band swing dance at the club. We could all go. You, me, Shirley, Jerry. I've been left out. Gerald leaps in. But what about Gerald? You want to hang out with us old folks? Wouldn't you rather be off at one of your protest marches or hootenannies? Spiff takes my hand. Gerald, you've been cooped up with me for weeks. Besides, it's a formal affair and you don't own a dinner jacket. Why don't you take Saturday night off? Have a night on the town. Yeah, you can hang out with your Timothy Learys and your Smothers brothers. When we get back to the condo, the fight commences. I don't want you going out with Pepper. Oh, for heaven's sakes, why not? The man's almost 90 years old. What do you think is going to happen? The last time we went out to eat, I had to cut his meat for him. Well, how would you like it if I went out on a date with someone? Well, I don't think someone would like that very much. Ha! I didn't think you would. Oh, I meant Laura. There is nothing that I can say that will salvage me. But Spiff does. She places a hand on my cheek and smiles, forgiving me of whatever sin there is. And then I stare into her eyes. I see her at her debut 50 years ago at a dance. In a car, a rumble seat, bathtub gin and a cigarette on the wind, the smell of lilacs breezing over the country club veranda. And she closes her eyes and tilts her head back for her first kiss. I lean in, the tiniest movement, and she turns and goes to her bedroom and flicks on the TV. Murder, She Wrote is on. This is Monday. The dance is Saturday. The next day's diary entries go like this. Tuesday, Spiff goes to a dress shop and buys what I would consider to be a very revealing black dress. Wednesday, she gets a new hairdo, manicure, and pedicure. Thursday, she buys a new pair of dress shoes. The shoes are not open-toed, so I asked, what was the pedicure for? And at what point in the evening does she intend to not be wearing shoes and showing her toes? That afternoon, I went for a walk along the docks. When I passed by the clinic's office, Dr. Nagangupta waves me in. I've got back your watch test results. I nod, doctor. We know the diagnosis. Oh no, the diagnosis you have is very wrong. In fact, it is completely incorrect. Whereas your Dr. Rosenblum has given her a 90% kidney failure, he has misread the chart. It is only 19% kidney failure. But what about the weakness? The loss of appetite? She has kidney troubles, yes. But that can be addressed with dialysis alongside of diet and medication. But she's gaining weight, isn't that bad? No! She has her appetite back! We have many fine restaurants here in Riddle Key. I tell you this because I think good news should come from a loved one first, don't you? What would happen if she doesn't start the treatment, the dialysis? Oh no, she must start the dialysis immediately. Otherwise, without that, a couple of months, one, maybe two, she will die. When I left the clinic, I started to think, I need to tell Spiff immediately. I need to tell her the good news. Instead, I called Laura. Laura didn't answer. Her architect did. He was there doing designs for the new addition to the house. Laura was away for the weekend to a spa. Says the contractor, gotta go! Pool contractor's here. So I don't tell Spiff the news. I don't tell her that night, or the next day, or the day after. On the third day, Saturday, I wake early and go for a walk along the man-made lagoon to clear my head. When who should appear but Jerry in his Corvette? Hey, Jer, got a minute? He gets out of the car and joins me along the ocean. Oh. Shirley slipped and fell in the garage last night, broke her hip. They did an x-ray. It's bone cancer, terminal. She's in the hospital. I guess I'll be going to the dance alone tonight. That's not what I wanted to talk to you about.
You see, it was Dr. Nagangupta who treated her, and he said, I wish it was good news that I was giving you like Mr. Halverson. I swallowed. So, have you told Spiff the good news yet? I hesitate. Oh, you're hesitating. You're thinking of lying to me. Well, I was just talking with Spiff in the backyard, and she reiterated that she's only got a matter of weeks. You know what I think? I think Gerald's being a naughty gigolo. I think Gerald's hoping that Spiff kicks it sooner rather than later. Am I right?
What do you want?
Half of everything you're going to get. You can start now. $10,000 a month.
What if I just tell Spiff the good news now?
3 days late? Oh, well, I get Nagangupta to tell her that he told you 3 days ago. What is Spiff going to think that her loving husband waited 3 whole days to tell her?
I look like I'm trying to think. Fine. 10,000 a month. I'll write you a check tonight after the dance.
Oh, goody! Ciao, fella!
And off he goes. Exhaust fumes trailing in his wake. Would have to be tonight. The dance is at 6. When I get back to the condo, it's 10 a.m. Spiff is taking a shower. I go to the utility room, and I get a bottle of bleach and a bottle of ammonia. From the kitchen, I get a large plastic baggie. At noon, I make a quick trip into Sarasota to a beauty salon to pick up some supplies, paying cash. 1 p.m. to a hardware store to buy a large sponge and a pair of yellow rubber gloves, paying cash. 2 p.m. to a bookstore and a clothing store to pick up some essentials for the evening, cash. At 4 p.m., I'm back at the condo and Spiff is taking a nap, so I open the book that I've bought to get some information on toxins and the respiratory system. At 5 p.m., Spiffy is dressed and ready to go when the doorbell rings. Pepper's here.
Hey, pal, not smoking any of that ganja reefer in here, I hope.
I fix Pepper and Spiff some drinks. And when I look at my watch, it's 5:43, but when I look up, Spiff is staring at me. Gerald, you look so forlorn. Why don't you come with us? I'm sure Pepper won't mind, would you, Pep? I shake my head. No. You said one should always wear black tie to formal occasions, and I didn't bring any dinner clothes. Spiff takes my hand. Oh, sweetie, in your case, I'll make the exception.
Don't beg him, Spiff. He'd be uncomfortable out there without his leather pants and moccasins.
Just before they're out the door, Spiff comes around and quickly gives me a kiss. Not quite the cheek, not quite the lips, but somewhere in that area of impropriety. When Pepper's Lincoln is pulled away, I go into gear. First, to my room to get the tux that I've bought. Spiff hasn't seen it yet, so that part was easy to get away with. Then to the bathroom, I get out the blonde wig that I bought at the salon. A couple of snips here, clips there, I fit it to my head. From a distance, it'll do. Then I go and pour the ammonia and the bleach into the baggie, and I put the sponge into the baggie to soak up the concoction. I close the bag, and I grab the rubber gloves. I walk evenly across the street. If anyone sees me, the Cuban gardeners, the dog walkers, the roaming senility cases, they'll think I'm him. If anyone asks what he was doing over at my house, I'll say, well, he was over having a drink. He was despondent. Cheryl had said that the garage door was always open. And it was. Inside, cherry red Mustang, white top down. I hear a noise from behind the kitchen door, and I duck behind a trash can, and I put on the rubber gloves. The door opens, and there's Jerry in a tux, like me. Hair, like me. I unzip the baggie. He gets into the car and puts the keys into the ignition, and the sponge goes around his face. He flails for a moment, and I dodge his nails, but then he slumps. 5 seconds, and the sponge goes back into the bag. I go inside the house, I get some towels, and I stuff them underneath the garage door. And then I take his fingers, and I place them on the key, and I turn the ignition. And the V8 motor roars.
car this vintage with a V8 engine, he should be dead in 20 minutes. I leave the way I came in. When I get back to the condo, I incinerate the sponge, the wig, and the gloves on the patio grill, and then I begin to practice my speech. I will call Laura and tell her that I'm not coming back. I will do my best to try to explain, but I need to save my strength, my courage, and dare I say my eloquence for Spiff. I need to tell her about Dr. Nagangupta's diagnosis. I need to convince her to start treatment that will add years to her life. And I need to persuade her to make our marriage real. See, what I realized is from the first moment that Jerry told me he planned to blackmail me was that what I feared most was not the loss of $5 million, but the loss of her. It was just past 8 when I heard the sirens. I peeked out the front curtains and I could see that the sirens were getting closer. The red and blue lights were reflecting in the palm trees. And then the ambulance came into view. It zoomed around the corner and down the street towards Jerry's house. And then it zoomed past, up and up around the curve to the club. By the time I got to the club, there was a crowd gathered at the ballroom entrance. Pepper was kneeling on the floor, and there on her back was Spiff with an oxygen mask on her face, medics working on her. We rushed to the hospital, and Pepper tried to explain.
We were dancing and laughing, and then she just fell over like a sack of tomatoes.
I tell the nurse who I am. I'm her husband. She tries not to react to that. Says that they're checking for everything. Stroke, heart attack. I tell her she's in end-stage renal failure. Is she on dialysis medication? No. She's not under any treatment? No. She picks up the phone. Sir, who is her doctor? Her doctor? Who is her doctor, and when was the last time she saw him? I open my mouth to try to answer, but Spiff rescues me. They're wheeling her into the ICU on a gurney. She has a pained look on her face. Spiff. Oh. Pepper says,
Oh, she's in such pain.
I go into the ICU room. The whoosh of the respirators and beep of the heart monitor cloud my thoughts. And someone taps me on the shoulder. Somebody in the hallway wants to see me. There, waiting for me, is a small, bald man with a police badge.
Sergeant Padilla, sorry to hear about your wife. I hope everything works out. I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions, if that's all right.
Certainly, Sergeant.
Well, there seemed to be a death on your street this evening. A Mr. Jerry Walden now, exhaust fumes, very old car, but whoo, what a beaut. I just wanted to know if you happened to notice anything about him recently, anything peculiar.
No. Well, he told me recently, actually, that his wife was very ill. Terminal. He's been very despondent.
Despondent, I see. Well, still we have to treat this like any mysterious death and check to see if there's any knockout drugs or a bump on the head or a bruise. I think to myself, you will not find any drugs, and you will not find a bruise. Still, I'll bet we come out with suicide.
When Sergeant Padilla leaves, I go back into the room. Pepper has tottered off somewhere. It's very quiet. I look at Spiff. Take her hand. See the wedding ring that her first husband got her. I didn't buy her a wedding ring. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to make this right. And then I wonder, why is it so quiet in here? No whoosh, no beep. And then I look at the bedside monitor. The green line has gone flat. The respirator, the plug. I go down to put it back into the wall. And that's when all the doctors and nurses rush in and see me on the floor with a plug in my hand. Sergeant Padilla gets the case. He interviews everyone. Laura, Dr. Nagangupta, lawyers. I protest as best I can and plead my case, but I'm not very effective, and I'm convicted. First-degree murder, death penalty. Laura never speaks to me again, ever. But her representative does. Arthur Adelot has some news.
Oh, well, according to your mother-in-law's new will, you were the sole beneficiary of her entire estate. But since you're about to die, well, naturally, I will leave everything to Laura. Well, it's not so simple, you see. You met Laura in college, yes?
Yes.
Lived in West Virginia with her for 7 years, yes?
Yes.
Well, West Virginia has common law marriage. So, according to West Virginia law, you're legally married to Laura. And so when you came down to Florida to try to marry her mother, you were committing bigamy, which makes her will invalid, which means years, probate costs, lawyers' fees, 40% capital gains, lost the house. Laura will be lucky to walk away with less than $1 million. Just thought you should know.
I don't get another visitor. Well, one, Pepper came to visit last week. The fan was blowing in the visitor's room. Pepper comes in.
I understand Spiff was in such pain. It was the same with Puss and my first 2 wives. They were in such pain.
And then he bent down and unplugged the fan and winked at me.
One does what one must. Take care, boy. I wanted to call the guard. My lawyer. Tell him what Pepper had done. Plead a new case.
Then I figured, what's the point? I had committed murder, and I was being punished. Albeit not for the murder I had committed, but such is the fate of an irony. Such is the fate of a generation raised on irony. My last request was to wear black tie. I told my keepers. My wife always said that one should wear black tie to formal occasions. I should think execution would qualify. So, as I sit here and wait, I realize I'm no one's boyfriend anymore. No one's son-in-law, no one's husband. I'm a murderer.